Mom looked straight into my Zoom square and said, "We do not want to see your face at her graduation." She did not hesitate. My sister smirked while Dad looked away. Right then, years of funding their lives shattered. I did not argue. I just quietly reclaimed the one thing they never thought I would touch. Before I tell you what I did, tell me, would you walk away? Or would you expose every secret they have ever hidden? My name is Alyssa Myers. I am 29 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Denver that smells perpetually of the coffee shop downstairs and the dusty heat of the radiator. And on this particular Sunday evening, I was bracing myself for what I affectionately called the weekly shakedown. My laptop sat on a stack of hardcover books because I had never gotten around to buying a proper stand. The blue light from the screen washed out my pale skin, making me look even more tired than I felt. I had spent the last 48 hours crunching data for a client who needed everything yesterday, and my eyes felt like they were packed with sand. But you do not cancel on the Myers family. Not unless you want a guilt trip that spans 3 time zones and lasts for 6 months. So I logged in. The Zoom interface chimed, that cheerful little ding that always sounded like a lie, and there they were, my family. I expected the usual preamble. I expected my mother, Denise, to comment on my hair, which was currently pulled back in a messy bun, or to ask why the lighting in my apartment was so dim, implying that I was living in squalor despite the fact that I sent them enough money every month to rent a penthouse in Ohio. I expected my father, Martin, to make a vague comment about the weather. I expected my younger sister, Brooke, to be looking at her phone, barely acknowledging my existence until she needed to send me a link to a pair of shoes she wanted. I did not expect the silence. It was a heavy, curated silence, the kind that happens when people have been talking about you right before you walk into the room. Then my mother leaned forward. The camera on her end was high definition, a gift I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago so we could feel closer. Now, it just meant I could see the precise map of wrinkles around her mouth as she pursed her lips. She did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She looked straight into the little black circle on her laptop, locking eyes with my digital ghost, and delivered the sentence that would sever the artery of our relationship. "We do not want to see your face at her graduation." She said it with such distinct articulation. She emphasized the words, "your face," as if my physical appearance was an offense to the aesthetic of the day. It was not a request. It was not a negotiation. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the cold efficiency of a judge handing down a sentence. For a second, the audio feed seemed to glitch in my brain. I sat there, frozen in my Denver apartment, while the hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded like a jet engine. "We do not want to see your face." I looked at the screen. I scanned for the punchline. My sister, Brooke, was sitting on the beige sectional sofa in the background. She was wearing a silk robe that I recognized because I had paid for the Amazon Prime order it came in. She was leaning back, her posture loose and liquid, the very picture of a girl who has never had to carry a heavy load in her life. She was not looking at me with pity. She was not looking at me with conflict. She was looking at the camera with a smirk that curled the corner of her mouth up toward her cheekbone. It was the smile of someone who had won a long, secret war. She looked satisfied. She looked like the princess of the house who had finally convinced the court to exile the peasant. Then my eyes shifted to my father, Martin. He was sitting in his usual armchair, but he was pulled slightly out of the frame, as if he was trying to physically distance himself from what was happening. He was not looking at the camera. He was staring intently at a spot on the carpet to his left. His hand, thick and calloused from years of factory work that had ended a decade ago, was resting on his knee. He was spinning his wedding ring, round and round, twist and pull. It was a nervous tick I had watched my entire life. It was the gesture of a man who had surrendered his spine 20 years ago to keep the peace. He knew what was happening. He had likely been in the room when they planned it, and he was doing what Martin Myers did best. He was looking away. I felt a physical sensation hit my chest, sharp and hot, like a hand slap. It traveled up my throat and settled behind my eyes. The old Alyssa, the one who had existed up until 10 seconds ago, would have started apologizing. That was my role. That was the script I had been handed at birth. I was the fixer. I was the one who smoothed things over. I would have asked, voice trembling. What did I do? I would have begged. I would have promised to stay in the back row, to not take any photos, to just be there to cheer. But something in the way Denise stared at me, daring me to cry, made the old Alyssa die a very sudden, quiet death. I did not ask why. Instead, I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the new curtains in the living room behind them. $400. I sent the money for those when Mom said the old ones were letting in too much draft. I saw the iPad in Dad's lap. $600. Father's Day gift. I saw Brooke's freshly highlighted hair. $300. Charged to the emergency credit card I gave her for emergencies only, which apparently included maintaining the perfect shade of honey blonde. The realization did not come as a wave. It came as an avalanche. I was not a member of this family. I was a utility. I was like the electricity or the water or the internet connection. You do not invite the electric company to a graduation party. You do not want to see the face of the water utility at a celebratory dinner. You just want the service to work. You want the bills to be paid. And when the utility starts making noise or having a personality, you get annoyed. Denise seemed irritated that I had not started crying yet. She needed the drama. She needed me to be the mess so she could be the martyr. When I stayed silent, she felt the need to fill the void. You always make everything about you. Alyssa, she said, her voice taking on that sharp, whining edge that used to make my stomach turn. You bring this heavy negative energy into everything. You realize that, don't you? Brooke has worked so hard for this degree. This is her moment. We need it to be peaceful. We cannot have you hovering around, judging everyone, making faces, judging everyone. I thought about the bank transfer I had made 2 months ago, $5,000 for the final semester tuition, because the student loan disbursement was delayed, or so they claimed. I had not judged. I had clicked transfer. Brooke chimed in then, her voice light and airy, like she was ordering a latte. Honestly, Alyssa, she said, examining her fingernails, it is not a big deal. Just stay in Denver. Just consider it a present. Not showing up is literally the best gift you could give me. The best gift. I looked at her. I looked at the girl whose diapers I had changed. I looked at the girl whose science fair projects I had built, because Mom was too busy and Dad was too tired. I looked at the girl who was wearing a graduation gown that was currently hanging in her closet, a gown that cost $85 plus shipping, paid for with the Visa card ending in 4190, my card. They did not mention the gown. They did not mention the tuition. They did not mention the rent for her off-campus apartment in Florida, which was due in 3 days. They just wanted me gone. But here was the question that started to bloom in the center of my chest, dark and thorny. If they removed me from the picture, did they understand that they were removing the infrastructure that held the picture up? I felt a strange coldness wash over me. It was not numbness. It was clarity. It was the feeling of a fever breaking. I looked at my mother, who was waiting for my explosion. I looked at my father, who was still spinning that gold band on his finger, hiding his eyes from his daughter. I looked at my sister, who was smiling like a cat with a canary in its throat. I took a breath. I let it out. Is that so? I said. My voice was low. It was steady. It did not crack. I saw a flicker of confusion cross Denise's face. She blinked. This was not the line from the script. I was supposed to be begging. I was supposed to be asking how I could fix it. Yes, well, Denise stammered slightly, adjusting her blouse. It is for the best. We just want everyone to be happy. We knew you would understand eventually. They thought I was accepting the terms. They thought I was rolling over. They thought that by saying, "Is that so?" I was agreeing to disappear into the background, to continue sending the checks while staying out of the photos. They thought I was going to be the silent partner in the business of Brooke's life. They had absolutely no idea who they were talking to anymore.
Okay, I said.
I moved my mouse cursor. I hovered over the camera icon on the Zoom interface. I turned off my video. My square on their screen went black. I was gone. I could still see them. Denise looking annoyed that she did not get a bigger reaction. Brooke rolling her eyes and mouthing something to Dad. Martin finally looking up at the screen now that he did not have to look me in the eye. I did not leave the meeting. I stayed there, a black square, a listening device in their living room. I minimized the Zoom window, dragging it to the corner of my primary monitor. Then, I turned to my second monitor. My movements were precise. My hands were not shaking. I felt a surgical calm. I opened a new browser tab. I typed in the address of my bank. The login page loaded. A familiar blue and white interface. I typed in my username. I typed in my password. Click. The dashboard loaded. The numbers filled the screen. Balances, credit limits, pending transactions. The anatomy of my own exploitation, laid out in black and red and green. On the left screen, my family was already moving on. I heard Brooke ask, "So, are we going to that Italian place for dinner after the ceremony? The one with the lobster ravioli?" I heard my mother answer, "Of course, honey, whatever you want, it is your big day." On the right screen, I saw the joint credit card account. I saw the authorized user list. I saw the recurring transfer schedules. I looked at the black square where my face used to be. "We don't want to see your face." "Fine," I whispered to the empty room. I reached for my mouse, and for the first time in my life, I did not look for the button that said transfer. I looked for the settings menu. I looked for the tab that controlled access. The connection between my heart and my wallet had just been severed, and as I stared at the list of authorized users on my platinum card, Denise Myers, Brooke Myers, I realized that if I was not going to be at the graduation, neither was my credit score. I clicked on the first account, and the war began. To understand how I became the villain in my family's narrative, you have to go back to the moment I stopped being their daughter and started being their investment portfolio. It happened 7 years ago. I had just packed my entire life into the back of a beat-up Honda Civic and driven 12 hours from our suffocatingly small town in Ohio to Denver. I had landed a junior data analyst position at Northline Analytics. It was an entry-level grind, the kind where you stare at spreadsheets until your corneas burn. But to me, it felt like I had been handed the keys to the kingdom. I remember staring at my very first direct deposit notification, $2,400, to a girl who had spent college surviving on cafeteria leftovers and student loans. It looked like a fortune. I felt powerful. I felt secure. That feeling lasted exactly 4 hours. My mother, Denise, called me that evening. The conversation started with the usual praise, her voice pitching up an octave as she told me how proud everyone was of my big city job. But I knew the rhythm of my mother's conversations. The praise was just the sugar coating on a very bitter pill. Within 10 minutes, the tone shifted. She started sighing. She mentioned that the tuition bill for Brooke's private university in Florida had arrived. It was higher than they expected. Brooke, who was 3 years younger than me, had insisted on going out of state because she needed to find herself near the ocean. "We are just a little short," Denise said, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if she was confessing a sin. "Just for this semester. Alyssa, your father is waiting on a bonus that might not come for another month. If we miss the deadline, they will drop her classes. You do not want your sister to fall behind, do you?" I did not hesitate, not for a second. I was the big sister. I was the successful one with the salary. I transferred $1,500. I told myself it was a loan. I told myself I was being a hero. I did not know it then, but I had just signed a contract in blood. The phrase "just this once" is the most dangerous lie in the English language. That one-time emergency quickly metastasized into a recurring line item in my budget. By the second semester, it was not just tuition, it was textbooks, because apparently, used books were not available for Brooke's specific courses. Then it was the dorm fees. Then came the housing argument. I remember standing in the kitchen of my first apartment, shivering because I kept the thermostat at 62 degrees to save money on heating. I was on the phone with Mom. "She cannot stay in the dorms. Alyssa, Mom insisted. It is too loud. You know Brooke has anxiety. She needs her own space to focus. If she fails her classes, all that money goes to waste. Do you want that on your conscience? So, I paid. I signed as the guarantor for a one-bedroom apartment with a balcony in sunny Florida. The contrast between our lives became almost comical, a dark joke that only I seemed to understand. I would sit in my dim living room in Denver, eating instant ramen noodles that cost 30 cents a pack, wearing a sweater indoors because I was terrified of my utility bill. Meanwhile, I would scroll through Instagram on my cracked phone screen and see Brooke's updates. There she was, tanned and glowing, holding a neon-colored cocktail at a beach bar, living my best life. The caption read, "There she was at a music festival, wearing a designer fringe vest. Vibes," she wrote. I knew exactly which credit card had paid for the cocktail and the vest. When I gently brought this up to Denise, suggesting that maybe Brooke could get a part-time job if she had time for festivals, my mother's voice turned icy. "We are a family. Alyssa," she lectured, "family exists to carry each other. We do not count pennies when it comes to love. Your sister is networking. She is building a social circle. That is part of the education. You are so rigid. You need to learn to be more generous with your spirit." And then there was Martin, my father. He played the role of the helpless observer perfectly. Every few months, he would mumble something while looking at his shoes. "I will pay you back. Liz, once the tax return comes in, once I sell the old truck, once things settle down." Things never settled down. The truck never sold. The tax return always mysteriously vanished into household repairs that I never saw receipts for, but because he said the words, because he acknowledged the debt. I let myself believe it was temporary. I let myself believe I was banking goodwill. The breaking point should have been the Christmas of 2018. I had saved up for 3 months to buy Brooke a new laptop. She had been complaining that her old one was too heavy to carry to class. I bought a sleek, high-performance machine. It cost me nearly $1,800. I wrapped it in silver paper with a real satin ribbon. We were all in the living room in Ohio. Brooke tore open the paper. She lifted the lid. She checked the specs on the box. Her smile faltered. "Oh," she said. My stomach dropped. "What is wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, her voice flat. "I just thought you were getting the Pro version with the Retina display. This is the standard model. The graphics card is kind of basic." The room went silent. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I looked at Denise, waiting for her to correct Brooke, to tell her to be grateful that her sister had just spent a month's rent on a gift. Denise just chuckled and patted Brooke's knee. "Well, maybe next year. Honey, your sister did the best she could." The best she could. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It tasted like ash. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe next year." But the moment that truly hardened my heart, the moment that turned my sadness into a cold, calculating resolve, happened 6 months later. I was visiting home for a weekend. Mom had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to the garden. It pinged with a message from Aunt Lydia. I did not mean to snoop, but the screen lit up, and my name was right there in the preview. "Aren't you worried Alyssa will stop paying eventually?" That is a lot of money. Denise. I should have walked away. Instead, I touched the screen. I read my mother's reply. "She pays because she is weak-hearted. She needs us to need her. Just let her feel like the savior. Besides, some kids are born to shine, and some are born to provide. Alyssa is a provider." I stood there in the kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, feeling something inside me shatter. It was not a loud break. It was quiet, like a hairline fracture in a windshield. Weak-hearted, born to provide. They did not see my generosity as love. They saw it as a character flaw they could exploit. They had profiled me. They knew that if they pressed the button marked guilt, the cash would dispense. After that day, I stopped waiting for a thank you. I stopped waiting for them to ask me how my day was. I noticed that our conversations had become purely transactional. They never asked, "Are you dating anyone?" They asked, Did the transfer for the sorority dues go through? They never asked. Are you happy in Denver? They asked. Can you increase the limit on the secondary card? The price of gas is going up. They never asked if I was in debt. They never asked if I was saving for a house of my own. They never asked if I was eating properly. I was simply the engine that kept the Brooke Myers show on the road. I went back to Denver and I kept paying, but I started keeping receipts. I started staring at the wall of my apartment where I taped up the printed confirmations of every tuition payment, every rent check, every credit card bill I paid off for them. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by paper, telling myself one final lie. Just get her to graduation, I whispered to the empty room. Once Brooke graduates, the obligation ends. She will get a job. Dad will retire. It will stop. I clung to that graduation date like a drowning woman clinging to a piece of driftwood. It was my finish line. It was the day I would get my life back. I had no idea that the finish line was actually a trap door. I had no idea that the very event I had paid tens of thousands of dollars to make happen would be the event where they would look me in the eye and tell me I was not welcome. I thought I was buying their future. In reality, I was just financing my own erasure. The screen of my laptop was still warm from the Zoom call, but the room around me felt like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. I was sitting in the dark, the only light coming from the dual monitors that cast a sterile blue glow over my face. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs, a dull thud that echoed the finality of my mother's words. We do not want to see your face. I was about to close the lid, to retreat into bed and let the depression take hold, when a notification banner slid into the top right corner of my primary monitor. It was an automated alert from my bank. Subject: Unusual activity. Detected on card, ending in 5822. I frowned. That card was a relic. It was a secondary credit card I had opened 4 years ago. Back when Brooke first moved to Florida, I had issued a supplementary card to my mother with a strict verbal agreement. It was for groceries and medical emergencies only. Over the years, I had seen the occasional charge for a prescription at CVS or a cart full of food at Publix, usually around $200. I had set it to autopay and, to my own detriment, I had stopped checking the line items. I trusted them. I clicked the email. The bank's fraud algorithm had flagged a transaction because it did not match the spending profile of a 60-year-old woman buying milk and bread. The charge was pending. It was for $3,892. The merchant was the Azure Coast Resort and Spa in Miami. I stared at the number, $3,892. I blinked, waiting for the number to change, thinking perhaps I was misreading a decimal point. Maybe it was $38 for lunch, but the comma was right there, mocking me. I logged into the banking portal, my fingers moving with a frantic speed that felt disconnected from my brain. I pulled up the transaction history for card 5822. It was not just the resort. The list populated the screen, scrolling down like the credits of a horror movie. 2 days ago, $650 at a boutique called Velvet Soul. I Googled it. Designer shoes. 3 days ago, $400 at a high-end steakhouse. Last week, $1,200 at a nightclub for bottle service. I felt a wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the desk. These dates coincided perfectly with the week Brooke had told me she was drowning in finals and was too stressed to talk. She had not been studying. She had been partying in Miami, and she had been doing it with a credit card that bore my name. My phone was sitting face down on the desk. I flipped it over and dialed Denise. She answered on the second ring, her voice sounding annoyed, likely because she was still dissecting my attitude from the Zoom call with the rest of the family. "What now?" "Alyssa," she sighed. "We are trying to eat dinner." "Mom," I said. My voice was dangerously calm. Why is there a $4,000 charge for a resort in Miami on the emergency grocery card? There was a pause, a silence that lasted exactly 3 seconds. In that silence, I heard the clinking of silverware in Ohio. "Oh, that," Denise said, her tone shifting from annoyance to a dismissive breeziness. "Don't be dramatic. Alyssa, It is not a big deal. Brooke needed a little getaway before graduation. The poor girl has been studying herself to death. She deserved a break. I felt the blood drain from my face. You spent $4,000 of my money on a vacation? Without asking? Alyssa, stop, she snapped. You are ruining the mood. It is a celebration. She is the first one in the family to get a degree like this. She needed new shoes for the ceremony. She needed to relax so she looked fresh for the photos. Do not spoil her moment just because you are obsessing over some numbers on a screen. You can afford it. You have that fancy job. Just pay it and let us enjoy our evening. Click. She hung up. She did not deny it. She did not apologize. She told me I was ruining the mood by objecting to grand larceny. I put the phone down. The nausea was gone, replaced by a cold, vibrating rage. It was a clarity unlike anything I had ever felt. It was the feeling of a detective who finally finds the murder weapon. I turned back to the computer. If they were willing to do this on the grocery card, what else were they doing? I opened everything, every single financial portal I had access to. I pulled up my Venmo history. I pulled up my PayPal. I pulled up the main credit card I used for my own daily life. I started scrolling. For years, I had seen small charges, $15 here, $20 there, and assumed they were mine. A sandwich I forgot I bought, a subscription I forgot to cancel. I was busy. I worked 60 hours a week. I didn't have time to audit every $5 charge. But now, I looked. Uber Eats, $80, delivery address, the university dorms, Florida, Netflix, premium, $22. I didn't even use Netflix. I used Hulu. Sephora, $150. Spotify Family Plan, Amazon Prime, HelloFresh. They were like barnacles. They had attached themselves to the hull of my financial life. Hundreds of tiny mouths feeding on my paycheck, month after month, year after year. They were eating steak dinners in Ohio and Florida, while I was meal prepping rice and beans in Denver. But the worst discovery was in my email archives. I searched for Northside University, Brooks School. I wanted to see exactly how much tuition I had paid over the years. I found an email from the bursar's office dated 3 weeks ago. It was sent to a secondary email address, Alyssa Myers Backup, that I had created years ago to manage Brooks' applications and then forgotten about. I still had it forwarded to my main inbox, but it usually went to spam. The subject line read, Confirmation of Payment Plan Extension. I opened it. Dear Ms. Myers, thank you for digitally signing the agreement to extend the tuition installment plan for another 12 months. As the guarantor, you accept full responsibility for the accrued interest. I stopped breathing. I had not signed that. I had not even seen that email. I looked at the metadata. The digital signature had been executed from an IP address in Ohio. My mother, or maybe my father, someone had logged into my old email account, impersonated me, checked the box that said, I agree, and legally bound me to another year of debt for a degree I wasn't even allowed to celebrate. That wasn't borrowing. That wasn't family helping family. That was identity theft. That was a felony. My hands were trembling now, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I was printing. The laser printer in the corner of my room whirred to life, spitting out page after page of statements. Zip, whir, zip, whir. The stack grew. Then, my phone buzzed again, a notification from WhatsApp. It was a message from Brooke. I frowned. Brooke never texted me unless she wanted something. I opened the chat. It was a screenshot, a picture of a conversation. At the top, the group name was Besties Forever. It was Brooke's group chat with her sorority friends. She must have meant to forward it to Mom or another friend to laugh at me. But in her arrogance, or perhaps her haste, she had tapped my name instead. I read the text bubble from Brooke. Friend, OMG, how are you affording the Miami trip and the new LV bag? I thought you said your sister was cutting you off. Brooke, LMAO, please, she is too soft. I just tell Mom to cry a little and Alyssa caves. She literally exists to pay whatever I put on the card. She just covers. It's like magic. She exists to pay. I stared at those 4 words. They didn't see me as a sister. They didn't see me as a human being with dreams or needs or feelings. To them, I was a walking, talking wallet. I was a function. I was a resource to be mined until the vein ran dry. It's like magic. I looked up from the phone. I looked at the printer, which had finally stopped whirring. The floor was covered in paper. I got up and started spreading them out on my dining table. Here was the Miami trip, $4,000. Here was the tuition extension, $25,000. Here were the accumulated Uber Eats charges over 4 years, nearly $3,000. Here was the emergency car repair for Dad that I paid for last year, $1,200. Right next to a credit card statement showing a charge for a 60-inch television bought the same week. I arranged them in chronological order. I used a red marker to circle the lies. It looked like a crime scene. It looked like the evidence board of a forensic accountant investigating a corporate embezzlement scheme. For 29 years, I had been told that love meant sacrifice. I had been told that a good daughter gives until it hurts. I had been told that money doesn't matter when it comes to blood. I looked at the screenshot on my phone again. She exists to pay. I looked at the statement from the Azure Coast Resort. Something inside me, the part that had always yearned for their approval, finally withered and died. It was replaced by something cold, hard, and incredibly sharp. They had taught me that family is everything, but the numbers on the table were telling a different story. The numbers were telling me that this wasn't family. This was a long con. This was a heist. And the numbers, unlike my mother, unlike my father, and unlike my sister, did not know how to lie. I picked up the red marker. I walked over to the stack of papers labeled future tuition payments. I capped the marker. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do exactly what a good analyst does when she finds an anomaly in the data. I was going to purge the system. The subject line of the email from Denise arrived 20 minutes after I had finished laying out the forensic evidence of their theft on my dining table. It read, in all capital letters, "Family meeting, now." There was no question mark. There was no polite request. It was a summons. In the past, my heart would have hammered against my ribs. I would have felt the familiar cocktail of guilt and panic, wondering what I had done wrong, wondering how much it would cost to fix it. But as I clicked the link to join the Zoom call, I checked my pulse. It was slow. It was steady. I was not entering the courtroom as the defendant anymore. I was entering as the prosecutor. The screen flickered to life. They were already there, arranged in the same tableau as before, but the atmosphere had shifted. The smug satisfaction of the graduation announcement was gone. In its place was a sharp, vibrating tension. Denise did not wait for my audio to connect. She launched her attack the moment my face appeared on the screen. "You have some nerve. Alyssa." She spat. Her face was flushed, blotchy patches of red blooming on her neck. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I was at the register. There was a line of people behind me, and the card was declined. Declined. The cashier looked at me like I was a criminal. I sat back in my chair. I did not apologize. I did not scramble to explain. I just watched her. "You locked the card," she accused, pointing a finger at the camera lens. "You called the bank and locked the card. Why would you do that without asking me?" Brooke chimed in from the couch. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was aggressively typing on her phone, probably complaining to her friends that her ATM was malfunctioning. "Seriously, Alyssa," Brooke said, her voice dripping with boredom. "Mom called me freaking out. You know I need the rest of the payment for the resort by tomorrow. If the card is locked, they are going to release our reservation. Do not be passive-aggressive. Just unlock it." I looked at Brooke. I looked at the girl who had mocked me in a group chat, calling me a wallet that existed solely to pay. I took a sip of water. The silence stretched. "Are you listening to me?" Denise demanded. "We need that card active. Now. And you need to transfer the final payment for the gown and the dinner. The school sent a reminder about the balance. If it is not cleared by Friday, Brooke does not walk." I set the glass down. No, I said. The word hung in the digital air between Denver and Ohio. It was small, but it landed with the weight of an anvil. Denise blinked. Excuse me? I said no. I repeated, I am not unlocking the card, and I am not transferring the balance. Brooke finally looked up from her phone. Her eyebrows knitted together. What are you talking about? Stop being weird. Just pay it. You are the only one with a real career. Alyssa, it is literally peanuts to you. Why do you always have to make everything so complicated? Peanuts? $25,000 in unauthorized tuition extensions. $4,000 for a Miami resort. 3 years of rent. To them, my labor was invisible. My 60-hour work weeks were invisible. The only thing that was real was the transaction. I leaned forward, bringing my face closer to the camera. From this moment forward, I said, my voice steady and devoid of any tremor, you are financially responsible for your own life, Brooke. I am done. The screen froze, not because of a connection error, but because their brains could not process the data I had just fed them. It was like I had started speaking a foreign language. Denise let out a short, incredulous laugh. It was a sharp, barking sound. Don't be ridiculous, she said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. You are just throwing a tantrum because of what I said earlier. About the graduation tickets. You are trying to punish us. It is childish. Alyssa, really childish. I am not punishing you. I said, I am correcting a clerical error. Clerical error? Denise's voice rose an octave. This is your sister's future. This is the most important week of her life. If you do not pay that balance, she does not step on that stage. Do you understand that? You are going to ruin everything because your feelings are hurt? I watched her face contort. I realized then that she truly believed this. She truly believed that my refusal to be robbed was an act of aggression. I am not ruining anything, I said. I am simply refusing to play a role that I never auditioned for. You told me earlier tonight that my face was not welcome at the ceremony, that I brought negative energy. That is different, Denise shrieked. That is about the event. This is about duty. You have a duty to this family. Martin, my father, cleared his throat. He had been silent until now, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. He looked at the camera, his eyes pleading, the same look he used when he asked to borrow money for the truck repairs that never happened. Alyssa. Honey. He started, his voice rough. Let's not do this now. Family is, you know how it is. We all pitch in. Your mother is just stressed. Just handle the bill, and we can talk about the rest later. We can... Martin! Denise snapped, cutting him off with a glare that could peel paint. Do not coddle her. She is being selfish. I looked at my father. He closed his mouth. He looked back down at his hands, resuming his spinning of the wedding ring. That was it. That was the confirmation. He knew. He knew about the forged signature. He knew about the stolen money, and he was willing to let me be bled dry as long as it kept Denise quiet and the house peaceful. His silence was not neutrality, it was complicity. I felt the final tether snap. The last thread of guilt that connected me to that house in Ohio disintegrated. I spoke over Denise's continued ranting. My voice was not loud, but it had a steel core that cut through her noise. Listen to me very carefully, I said. Denise stopped. The sudden drop in my tone made her pause. You told me you did not want to see my face at her graduation. I said, I am honoring that request. But here's the other half of that arrangement. If you do not want to see my face, then do not expect to see my name on any of your bills, ever again. The silence that followed was absolute. Brooke's mouth fell open. The smirk was gone. The entitlement was gone. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, but fear of the reality that was crashing down on her. You can't do that, Brooke whispered. You signed the papers. You are the guarantor. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile. We will see about that, I said. Denise exploded. The transition from shock to rage was instantaneous. She stood up, her face turning a violent shade of purple. She leaned into the camera, her features distorted by the wide-angle lens. "You ungrateful little brat," she screamed. "After everything we did for you, we raised you, we fed you, you think you are better than us because you have a degree? You are jealous. That is what this is. You are jealous that Brooke is popular and happy, and you are sitting alone in that cold apartment. You are a miserable, selfish—" "You are killing us," Brooke yelled, joining the chorus. "You are ruining my life. I hate you. I hope you die alone." The words washed over me like water off a duck's back. Yesterday, those words would have destroyed me. Yesterday, I would have cried. I would have typed in the credit card number just to make the screaming stop. But today, looking at the printouts on my desk, looking at the evidence of their betrayal, their insults sounded like desperation. They were the sounds of parasites realizing the host was detaching itself. I did not yell back. I did not debate. I simply moved my mouse.
"Goodbye," I said.
I clicked the red end meeting button. The screen went black. The screaming was cut off in mid-syllable. Silence rushed back into my apartment. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I felt light. I felt incredibly, impossibly light. I turned to my second monitor. The banking portal was still open. The student loan servicer's website was open in another tab. My hands were steady. I did not shake. I navigated to the recurring payment plan for Northside University, the one that had been fraudulently extended with a digital signature that wasn't mine. I clicked Manage Plan. I moved the cursor to the bottom of the page. There was a small, gray link, Cancel Payment Authorization. I clicked it. A pop-up window appeared. Warning: canceling this plan will result in the immediate due date of the full balance. The student may be barred from graduation activities if the balance is not settled. Are you sure? I thought about the grocery card used for a Miami resort. I thought about the text message. She exists to pay. I thought about my father looking away. I moved the mouse to the Yes button. I clicked Processing. Success. Payment plan canceled. I leaned back in my chair and took the deepest breath of my life. The van was closed. The pipeline was severed. The war was no longer just a skirmish. I had just dropped the bomb. The silence in my apartment after the Zoom call ended was not empty. It was heavy, vibrating with the static of a bridge that had just been detonated. I did not move from my desk. I did not go to the kitchen to pour a drink. I did not pace. I sat with the posture of a pianist about to perform a complex concerto, my hands hovering over the keyboard. This was not a tantrum. This was an extraction. I turned back to the Northside University student portal. The session was still active. I navigated to the financial aid section, the screen awash in the school's cheerful blue and gold colors that had cost me over $80,000 in the last 4 years. I clicked on the loan agreement history. There it was, the document I had allegedly signed 3 weeks ago. I opened the PDF. I scrolled to the bottom. Signed, Alyssa Myers. Date, May 12th. Time, 2:45 p.m. I looked at my work calendar for May 12th. At 2:45 p.m., I was in a compliance meeting with 3 senior partners at Northline Analytics. I was nowhere near a computer where I could access personal email, and I certainly wasn't in Ohio. I looked at the digital footprint log attached to the signature. IP address, 74.19. I ran a quick trace. The location popped up. Residential ISP, Akron, Ohio. It was my parents' house. They had not just borrowed money, they had impersonated me. They had logged into my account, used my credentials, and legally bound me to another $25,000 of debt without my consent. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but I pushed it away. Emotions were for later. Right now, I needed to be a surgeon. I went to the Payment Options tab. I found the button I was looking for. It was small, gray, and tucked away at the bottom of the page, designed to be overlooked. Revoke Guarantor Status. I clicked it. A warning box popped up, red and aggressive. Warning: Revoking this status will trigger an immediate demand for full payment from the primary student. The student's access to transcripts and graduation ceremonies may be suspended until the balance is cleared. I read it twice. I wanted to make sure I understood the physics of what I was about to do. I was not just stopping a payment, I was pulling the rug out from under a 4-year masquerade. I moved the cursor. I clicked confirm. The screen refreshed. A green banner appeared across the top. Success. You are no longer financially responsible for this student account. I stared at those words, no longer responsible. It was just a string of code, a few pixels on a screen, but it felt like a physical weight had been lifted off my chest. It was the first official document in my life that acknowledged I was allowed to be free. I did not stop there. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the university's bursar office. It was after hours, so I got the automated system. I pressed the number for the fraud department. It went to voicemail. I cleared my throat. I spoke clearly, my voice devoid of the trembling daughter who used to apologize for existing. My name is Alyssa Myers. My social security number ends in 8944. I am calling to place a formal fraud alert on the student account of Brooke Myers. I did not sign the extension agreement dated May 12th. That signature was forged. I am formally notifying you that I am severing all financial ties to this account effective immediately. Any further attempt to charge my accounts will be treated as theft.
I hung up.
Phase 1 complete. Now for the rest of the infrastructure. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it Evidence. I started downloading bank statements, credit card logs, the PDF of the forged signature, the screenshot of the "She exists to pay" text message. I renamed every file with a specific naming convention: date, amount, description. May 14th, $4,000, Miami Resort, unauthorized. April the 2nd, $300, Sephora, unauthorized. As I was digging through the cloud storage account that I shared with the family, another $20 a month I paid for, I found a folder labeled Audio. My phone automatically backed up voice memos, and apparently, so did theirs, because we were all on the same family plan. There was a file dated 6 months ago. It was a 40-minute recording. The title was just a string of numbers. I put on my headphones. I clicked play. It was a recording of a group FaceTime call. I must not have been on it. It was just Denise and Brooke. Honestly, Mom, I don't know why she complains. Brooke's voice came through, tinny and distorted. She makes so much money. What does she even spend it on? She has no life. I know, honey, Denise's voice answered. That is why we have to help her spend it. We are doing her a favor. If we didn't ask for it, she would just hoard it. Alyssa needs a purpose. We are her purpose. I heard them laugh. It wasn't a malicious, movie villain laugh. It was a casual, comfortable laugh. The laugh of two people discussing a tool they owned, like a lawnmower or a dishwasher. You just have to know how to handle her. Denise continued. You push the guilt button, wait for her to get quiet, and then she transfers the money. It is like training a dog. She was born to support. Brooke. Some people are the stars, and some people are the stage crew. Alyssa is the stage crew. The stage crew. I paused the recording. I dragged the file into the evidence folder. I did not cry. I felt a strange sense of validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't oversensitive. I wasn't imagining things. They had a strategy. They had a playbook. I was a project they managed, not a person they loved. I closed the folder. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to a legal consultation service I had access to through my employee benefits at Northline. It was a 24-hour chat service. I typed in the summary. Family members used my identity to sign loan documents. Unauthorized credit card use totaling over $30,000. I have revoked access. What is my exposure? The response came back within 3 minutes. Lawyer. If you have proof of the forgery and the unauthorized charges, you are the victim of identity theft. You are not liable for the debt if you contest it. However, you must document everything. Do not agree to any payment plans to fix it. Do not verbally agree to cover it. Keep all communication in writing. If they contact you, refer them to the written notice. Keep it in writing.
I nodded.
I turned back to my browser. I went to the login page for Netflix. Change password. I went to Spotify. Sign out of all devices. Change password. I went to Amazon Prime. Remove family members. Change password. I went to the food delivery apps. Remove saved cards. It felt petty. It felt small. But it was necessary. I was closing the windows. I was locking the doors. I was turning off the lights in the house they had built inside my wallet. I imagined Brooke in Florida, perhaps trying to listen to a playlist while getting ready for a party, and the music suddenly cutting out. I imagined Denise trying to order groceries tomorrow and having the order rejected. I was not doing this to hurt them. I was doing this to show them that the magic had run out. The stage crew had gone on strike. Finally, I opened my banking portal one last time. I ordered a new card with a new number to replace the one I had locked. I set up two-factor authentication on every single account I owned.
I sat back.
The digital silence was absolute. I stood up and walked to the window of my apartment. It was dark now. The city of Denver was spread out below me, a grid of gold and white lights stretching toward the mountains. It was beautiful. For years, I had looked at this view and felt guilty. I felt guilty that I was here in a high-rise while they were in Ohio. I felt guilty for every latte I bought, for every dollar I saved. Now, looking at the lights, I felt something else. Ownership. This was my view. I paid for it. I worked for it. My phone, which was sitting on the dining table, lit up. It buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again, a continuous, angry vibration against the wood. I walked over and looked at the screen. Mom, 5 missed calls. Brooke, 3 missed calls. Text from Mom. Alyssa, pick up the phone now. Text from Brooke. My Spotify just stopped working? What did you do? Text from Dad. Please, honey, let's talk. I looked at the notifications stacking up like bricks. They were panicking. They were realizing that the ATM was not just out of order. It had been removed from the wall. I reached out and flipped the little switch on the side of the phone. Silent mode. I did not block them. Not yet. I needed them to see that I was receiving their messages and choosing not to answer. I needed them to understand that my silence was not a pause. It was an answer. I turned off the lights in the living room, leaving only the glow of the city coming through the window. For the first time in 29 years, I chose to listen to the quiet of my own life instead of the noise of theirs. The invitation arrived in my inbox at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. The subject line was written in uppercase letters that screamed for attention. Alyssa, this has gone too far. It was a Zoom link, but when I hovered over the participant list, my stomach tightened. It was not just Denise, Martin, and Brooke. The list included Aunt Lydia, my cousin Mark, and even my grandmother, who usually only video chatted on Christmas. Denise had called in the cavalry. She was not just angry. She was staging a public tribunal. She wanted to shame me back into submission, and she was going to use the entire extended family as the audience. I showered. I put on a blazer, my armor for client presentations. I brewed a cup of black coffee, and then, at exactly 8 o'clock, I clicked the link. The screen filled with a grid of faces. There was Aunt Lydia in her kitchen, looking confused. There was Cousin Mark, clearly logging in from his car. And there were my parents and Brooke, sitting on the sofa like a united front of victims. Denise wasted no time. She did not say hello. She launched into her opening statement with the tearful vibrato of a soap opera actress. Thank you all for coming, she began, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. I am sorry to drag you into this, but we are desperate. We are absolutely desperate. Alyssa has had some sort of breakdown. She has cut off all support for her sister 3 days before graduation. She has called the bank and accused her own mother of theft. She paused for effect. I saw Aunt Lydia frown and look at her screen. Brooke is devastated, Denise continued, placing a hand on my sister's shoulder. Brooke buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking in a performance that deserved an award. We are afraid Brooke won't be able to walk across the stage because Alyssa locked the funds. After everything we sacrificed to raise her, this is how she repays us. With cruelty, with coldness. The gallery view shifted. I saw eyes turning to my square. They were waiting for me to explode. They were waiting for the defensive scream, the crying, the denial. I sat perfectly still. I took a sip of coffee. "Are you finished?" I asked. Denise looked taken aback by my calm. "Yes, I am finished. I just want you to explain to your grandmother why you are ruining this family over a few bills." I nodded. Okay. I did not address the family. I did not appeal to their emotions. I simply moved my mouse to the bottom of the screen and clicked the green button that said, Share Screen. A dialog box popped up. I selected Monitor 2. The faces of my family were replaced by my desktop. In the center of the screen was the folder I had named Evidence. I heard a sharp intake of breath from someone, probably Mark. I opened the first PDF. It was the bank statement for the emergency grocery card. I zoomed in until the transaction line filled the screen. "Let's look at the facts," I said, my voice sounding like I was presenting a quarterly earnings report. "This is the card I gave Mom 4 years ago for milk and medicine." I highlighted the line items. May 14th, the Azure Coast Resort. Miami, $3,892. May 15th, Velvet Sole Designer Footwear, $650. May 16th, Club Live, Bottle Service, $1,200. I let the numbers hang there. I spoke clearly. Unless the local grocery store in Ohio has started selling luxury resort packages and bottle service in Miami, this is not a misunderstanding. This is misappropriation of funds. I heard a gasp. Denise's face in the corner thumbnail went pale. That is not," Denise stammered. "You are twisting things. That was for Brooke's mental health." I closed that file and opened the next one. "This is a log of Uber Eats deliveries," I continued, ignoring her. "Over the last 3 years, $3,400 of food was delivered to Brooke's dorm. I was told she was on a meal plan. I paid for that meal plan. So, I essentially paid for her to eat twice." I opened the next file. This was the kill shot. The email from the university. "And this," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "is the most interesting document of all." I zoomed in on the digital signature section. 3 weeks ago, someone logged into the university portal and signed an extension for a $25,000 loan in my name. I circled the IP address on the screen with my cursor. The signature was executed from a computer located at 42 Oak Street, Akron, Ohio, at the exact moment this document was signed. I was in a compliance meeting in Denver. I have the meeting minutes to prove it. I paused. I looked directly into the camera lens. "So, I have a question for the room. Who signed my name? Who committed felony identity fraud 3 weeks ago?" The silence on the call was absolute. It was a vacuum. Denise was opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. Brooke had stopped fake crying and was staring at the screen with wide, terrified eyes. "Alyssa," Denise finally managed to choke out, her voice trembling with rage. "You are embarrassing us. You are airing dirty laundry. This is just a technicality. We were going to tell you." "A technicality?" I repeated. I stopped sharing the screen for a moment so they could see my face. And then I played the audio. I opened the file labeled The Strategy. I pressed play. The sound of Denise's voice, clear and undeniable, filled the speakers of everyone on the call. "We have to help her spend it. We are doing her a favor. You just have to know how to handle her. You push the guilt button. She was born to support. Brooke. Alyssa is the stage crew." The recording played for 30 seconds. When it finished, I saw Cousin Mark reach up and turn off his camera. Then Aunt Lydia turned off hers. One by one, the witnesses that Denise had summoned to condemn me were fading into black squares. They could not look at me. They could not look at her. They realized they had been invited to an execution, only to find out the executioner was the one on trial. "Alyssa, please," Martin spoke up, His voice was weak. "Turn it off. We can talk about this later. We can work something out. You are taking this too far." I looked at my father. "Too far?" I asked. "Dad, you watched them spend my money for years. You watched me drive a 10-year-old car while you watched a 60-inch television that I paid for. You knew about the signature." I didn't know the details," he mumbled, looking away. "You knew enough," I said. "You knew I was the one paying, and you chose not to look because it was easier for you. That makes you an accomplice." I looked back at Denise. She was no longer playing the victim. She was looking at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the look of a predator who realizes the prey has grown teeth. "This is not a negotiation," I said. "This is a notification." I pulled up one last document on the shared screen. It was a draft of an email I had prepared. "I am declaring formally, in front of these witnesses, that I am severing all financial ties with this family. I have canceled the payment plans. I have reported the cards as compromised. And regarding the forged signature..." I let the cursor hover over the line where I had CC'd a generic legal intake address. "If my name is used one more time, if so much as a subscription renewal goes through on my dime, I will not call you. I will not call the bank. I will hand this entire folder of evidence to the fraud department and the police, and I will press charges for identity theft." Brooke screamed. It was a real scream this time. "You can't do that. You will send Mom to jail. You are crazy." "Then stop stealing from me," I said calmly. I looked at the timestamps. I looked at the faces of the people who were supposed to love me. I have already sent a summary of this meeting, along with the evidence files, to my personal attorney. I lied. I didn't have a personal attorney yet, just the work consultation. But they didn't know that. If you try to harass me, if you try to slander me to the rest of the family like you did in that email, he will release the full audio recordings to everyone in the contact list. Denise looked defeated. She slumped back in her chair. The power dynamic had shifted so violently that the room seemed to tilt. She had brought a knife to a gunfight, and I had just fired a warning shot across her bow. I clicked the stop share button. My face filled the screen again. I looked tired, but I felt cleaner than I had in years. "I hope you enjoy the graduation," I said. "I hear the ceremony is beautiful. Just make sure you pay for your own parking." I moved my mouse to the red button. "Alyssa, wait," Martin called out. "Goodbye," I said. I left the meeting. The window closed. The voices were cut off. I sat there in the silence of my apartment. My hands were shaking now, a delayed reaction to the adrenaline, but I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking from the sheer, massive effort of pushing a boulder off my chest that I had been carrying for a decade. I opened my email. I saw the sent notification for the summary I had just bluffed about. I decided to make it real. I forwarded the entire chain to the legal consultation service I had used the night before. Subject: Documentation of confrontation regarding identity fraud. I hit send. It was done. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had nuked the foundation. The fallout from the Zoom call was not immediate silence. It was the opposite. It was a digital riot. I had assumed that showing them the hard evidence, the forged signatures, the resort bills, the recorded conversations, would shame them into retreat. I thought the truth was a shield, but I had underestimated Denise's ability to spin a narrative. She did not need facts. She just needed a phone list and a sob story. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone had turned into a weapon of psychological warfare. It started with a text from an uncle I had not spoken to since Christmas of 2018. "Uncle Steve, I heard what you did to your mother, cutting her off right before the graduation. I thought you were raised better than that. Money changes people, but I didn't think it would turn you into a monster." Then came a Facebook message from a cousin in Ohio. "Cousin Sarah, my mom says you are trying to get Aunt Denise arrested. Seriously? After she co-signed your first car loan? You are so ungrateful. You need to apologize and fix this before the family falls apart." They were coming in waves, the flying monkeys. That is what the internet calls them. The enablers who do the bidding of the narcissist. Denise had clearly spent the last 24 hours working the phones, painting a very specific picture. In her version, I was the hysterical, greedy daughter who had made a fortune in the city and was now lording it over her struggling, self-sacrificing parents. She conveniently left out the part about the identity theft. She left out the Miami resort. She left out the fact that I had paid for the very phone she was using to badmouth me. I sat at my desk, watching the notifications stack up. Ungrateful, cold, selfish, cruel. My finger hovered over the block button. I wanted to shut it all out. I wanted to erase them. But the analyst in me knew that silence would be interpreted as an admission of guilt. If I said nothing, Denise's version of history would become the official record. I opened my email client. I did not write a long, emotional defense. I did not try to explain my feelings. I simply drafted a new email. Subject: clarification regarding financial dispute. I attached 3 files. File 1: the bank statement highlighting the Miami resort charges on the grocery card. File 2: the digital trace of the forged signature from the IP address in Akron. File 3: the audio clip of Denise calling me the stage crew. I addressed it to Uncle Steve, Cousin Sarah, and every other relative who had felt the need to weigh in on my character that morning. The body of the email was 1 sentence long. I am attaching the receipts that explain my decision. Please listen to the audio file before you text me again. I hit send. I sat back and waited. The barrage of text stopped abruptly. It was as if I had dropped a silence bomb into the family network. They could argue with my feelings, but they could not argue with a bank statement showing a $4,000 charge for bottle service. An hour later, a single notification popped up on my phone. It was a direct message on Instagram. It was from Aunt Lydia. Lydia was my mother's younger sister. She was the quiet one, the one who usually sat in the corner at Thanksgiving and nodded along while Denise held court. On the Zoom call yesterday, she had been one of the first to turn off her camera. Lydia: can you talk? I have something you need to see. I hesitated. Was this another trap? Was she coming to tell me that I had broken my mother's heart? Alyssa: I am not interested in being lectured. Aunt Lydia: Lydia, I am not here to lecture. I am here to warn you. Check your other inbox. I switched to my email. There was a message from Lydia. It contained 6 screenshots. They were from a private WhatsApp group called The Sisters. It was just Denise, Lydia, and their other sister, Carol. I opened the first image. It was dated 2 years ago. Denise: just got Alyssa to cover the new transmission for Martin's truck. Told her the mechanic was threatening to keep it. She transferred the money in 5 minutes. She is so terrified of disappointing us. It is almost too easy. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Too easy. I opened the next one. This one was dated last week, just days before the graduation blow-up. Denise: we are going to list the house next month, but we need to do some renovations first to get the appraisal up. The roof needs work. I am going to put the loan in Alyssa's name. The bank loves her credit score. I'll just tell her it's a cosign for Brooke, but I'll handle the paperwork. She won't even read it. She never reads it. My blood ran cold. I looked at the date. It was from last Tuesday. I went back to the chat with Lydia. Alyssa: did she do it? Did she apply for the loan? Lydia: I think so. She was bragging about getting the paperwork ready yesterday morning, before your Zoom call. Alyssa: I am sorry I didn't say anything sooner. She did this to me 10 years ago when I was getting divorced. She borrowed money for the family and never paid it back. I was too scared to speak up. I saw your face on that call yesterday, and I realized I couldn't let her do it to you too. I typed back, thank you. Lydia: I did not have time to process the betrayal. I did not have time to cry over the fact that my mother had been mocking my generosity to her own sisters for years. The roof needs work. I am going to put the loan in Alyssa's name. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number for the National Credit Bureau. I had locked my cards, but I hadn't frozen my credit report yet. I had assumed the damage was contained to existing accounts. I was wrong. Denise wasn't just milking the current cow. She was trying to mortgage the farm. I got through to a representative. I need to place an immediate fraud alert and a total freeze on my credit report. I said, my voice sharp and breathless. I believe a family member is attempting to take out a home equity loan or a personal renovation loan in my name without my consent. I verified my identity. The agent typed in the background. Okay. Ms. Myers, the freeze is active, the agent said. But I should let you know, we do see a hard inquiry on your file from yesterday. My heart stopped. From who? First National Bank of Ohio. The agent read, application for a secured home improvement loan, $75,000. $75,000. She was going to put me $75,000 in debt to fix a roof on a house I didn't own, a house she was planning to sell. Is the loan approved? I asked. It is pending final review, the agent said. They are likely waiting for income verification. Kill it, I said. Flag it as fraud. Tell them I did not authorize it. Tell them the applicant is impersonating me. I stayed on the line for 45 minutes. I faxed a copy of my driver's license and a signed affidavit of identity theft to the bank's fraud department. I made sure that application was not just rejected, but incinerated. By the time I hung up, it was 6 p.m. The sun was setting over Denver, casting long, bruised shadows across my apartment. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were finally steady. Then my phone rang. It was Denise. I stared at the screen. I knew exactly why she was calling. The bank had just called her. The bank had just told her that the $75,000 safety net she thought she had secured had just snapped. I swiped the green button. I did not say hello. I just put the phone to my ear. You little witch, Denise hissed. Her voice was not the polished, manipulative tone she used on Zoom. It was guttural. It was the sound of an animal caught in a trap. You ruined it, she screamed. The bank just called. They said the loan is flagged for fraud. They said they might have to file a police report because of the Social Security number usage. Do you have any idea what you have done? We needed that money to fix the roof. We can't sell the house without the roof. I walked over to the window. I looked out at the city lights. I know, I said. Lydia told me. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Lydia? Yes, I said. You should really be more careful about what you brag about in group chats. Mom? Aunt Lydia didn't appreciate seeing her niece being set up as a mule. You turned the family against me. Denise spat. You are poisoning everyone. I am your mother. I gave you life. And you have been charging me for it ever since. I said. That is not true, she yelled. We love you. We needed help. Why do you have to be so transactional? Why does everything have to be about numbers with you? Because you made it about numbers, I said. My voice was quiet, but it filled the room. You didn't treat me like a daughter. Mom, you treated me like a line of credit. You treated me like an asset to be liquidated. You didn't want to see my face at the graduation, remember? You just wanted the credit card to clear. That is not what I meant, she cried, her voice cracking now, shifting back to the victim mode. I was just stressed. It does not matter what you meant. I said, it matters what you did. You tried to steal $75,000 from me yesterday. That is not stress. That is a crime. I took a breath. I have frozen everything. Mom, the credit report, the cards, the loans. If you try to open so much as a store credit card at Macy's in my name, the police will be at your door. This is over. You are dead to me, Denise whispered. Her voice was cold and hard. If you do this, if you leave us with this mess, you are dead to us. Do not come home for Christmas. Do not call us when you get sick. You have no family. I listened to the threat. It was meant to be the ultimate punishment. It was meant to break me. But standing there, knowing that I had just stopped a $75,000 bullet from hitting my future, I didn't feel broken. I understand, I said. I hung up. I stood by the window for a long time. The apartment was silent. The phone had stopped ringing. The emails had stopped coming. The war was over, and the silence that followed was not the silence of peace, but the silence of a battlefield after the cannons have stopped firing. I walked over to my desk. I opened the drawer and pulled out a physical notebook. It was a journal I had bought 2 years ago and never used.
I picked up a pen.
I opened to the first blank page. My hand hovered over the paper. I wrote the date. Then I wrote, "For 29 years, I thought being a good daughter meant setting myself on fire to keep them warm. I thought love was a debt I had to pay off forever." I paused. I looked at the dark screen of my phone. "Tonight, they told me I have no family. They think they punished me." I underlined the last sentence. But if I have to choose between being the good daughter in their story and being a free woman in mine, I have finally made the choice. I closed the journal, I turned off the lamp, and for the first time in my life, I went to sleep without wondering how much tomorrow was going to cost me. The sun hit my duvet at 7:30 in the morning. I did not set an alarm. For the last 4 years, graduation weekend had loomed in my mind like a tax audit, a deadline I had to sprint toward with my checkbook open. But today, waking up in my apartment in Denver, the silence was not heavy, it was golden. I stretched. I felt the cool sheets against my legs. I did not reach for my phone. Usually, my mornings began with a panic scroll through emails to make sure no emergencies had erupted overnight. Today, I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen. I made coffee using the slow drip method, watching the water turn dark as it filtered through the grounds. I scrambled 2 eggs with spinach. I sat by the window and watched the traffic on the highway below, moving in a steady, hypnotic stream. I was 2,000 miles away from the chaos I knew was currently unfolding, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel the urge to fix it. In Florida, the sun would be blazing. I knew the schedule by heart because Denise had emailed it to me 6 times before she uninvited me. The ceremony was set to begin at 10 o'clock. I closed my eyes and I could see it. Brooke would be standing in line outside the university stadium. She would be wearing the black gown I had refused to pay for. I assumed Denise had put it on a credit card she could not afford. Or perhaps they had pawned something. Brooke would be checking her makeup in her compact mirror, adjusting the tassel on her cap. She would be nervous, but underneath the nerves, there would be that familiar, arrogant certainty. She believed in the magic. She believed that even if the sky was falling, someone, me, would catch it before it hit her head. She thought the blocked cards and the canceled plans were just a bluff. She thought that when she got to the registration table, the green light would blink, because Alyssa always made the green light blink. But I was here, eating eggs in Denver, and the green light was not going to blink. I imagined the moment with a clarity that felt like I was watching a documentary. Brooke would step up to the table where the volunteers were handing out the name cards for the stage walk. She would give her name, Brooke Myers. The volunteer would type it into the laptop. Then, the volunteer would frown. I imagined the pause, the tap-tap-tap of the keyboard, the look of confusion. "I am sorry," the volunteer would say. "There is a financial hold on this account. You are not cleared to walk." Brooke would laugh. She would think it was a clerical error. "No, that is wrong." She would say, "My sister handles that. Check again." Then Denise would step in, my mother, in her expensive floral dress, ready to bully a 19-year-old student volunteer. "What is the problem?" she would demand. "We paid everything. Call the bursar." And then came the sentence that I had engineered with a single mouse click 3 days ago. "The guarantor has withdrawn authorization." The staff member would say, "The payment plan was canceled on Tuesday. The outstanding balance is $25,000, unless you can pay that right now, in full. We cannot release the diploma or the name card." I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot and bitter and perfect. My phone, which I had left face down on the living room table, began to buzz. It was a long, angry vibration. It stopped, then started again immediately, then again. I did not get up. I did not look at the screen. I knew what was happening. The magic had failed. The reality of the transaction was finally hitting them. They were standing at the gate of the future, and they had just realized they did not have a ticket. I finished my breakfast. I washed the plate. I put on my sneakers and a light jacket. I put my phone in my pocket, but I kept the little switch on the side flipped to mute. I walked out of my apartment and headed toward Washington Park. The air in Denver was crisp. People were walking dogs. A group of teenagers was throwing a frisbee. It was a normal Saturday. The world was not ending. The sky was not falling. It was only falling for 3 people in Florida who had built their house on a foundation of theft. I walked for 2 hours. I circled the lake, watching the geese glide over the water. I thought about Brooke. Right now, her classmates would be marching into the stadium to the sound of pomp and circumstance. Brooke would be standing outside the gate, or perhaps sitting in the car, crying. She was facing the first real consequence of her life. It was harsh, it was public, and it was absolutely necessary. I stopped at my favorite coffee shop on the edge of the park. The barista, a guy named Dave with a beard and kind eyes, smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Alyssa," he said. "You look different today. Lighter." I smiled. "I feel lighter. Dave, I did some spring cleaning this week." "Oh yeah?" he asked, starting my order without me needing to say it. "Cleaned out the closet?" "Something like that," I said. I threw out a lot of old baggage, stuff I was carrying for other people. Dave nodded sagely as he handed me my iced latte. "Good for you. You cannot carry everyone else's luggage forever. Eventually, your back breaks." I looked at him, surprised by the accidental wisdom. "Exactly," I said. My back was breaking. I sat on a bench outside the coffee shop and finally pulled my phone out of my pocket. There were 14 missed calls, 7 from Denise, 5 from Brooke, 2 from Martin. There were voicemails. I saw the transcription of the first one from Denise. "You are a monster. Do you hear me? You are a monster. You ruined her day. She is sitting on the curb crying. Everyone is asking where she is. How could you do this? I hope you rot." I deleted it without listening. The words had no power over me. They were the thrashing of a drowning swimmer who was angry that the lifeguard had finally gone off duty. Then, I saw a text message from my father. It had come in 10 minutes ago. It was short. Martin was not a man of many words, especially written ones. "Dad, it is chaos here. Your mother is screaming at everyone. Brooke is devastated. It is very bad. Alyssa." I stared at the screen, waiting for the guilt trip, but a second message popped up. "Dad, but I understand why you did it. I should have stopped this years ago. I am sorry I let it go this far. Be safe." I read the text 3 times. "I am sorry." It was the first time in 29 years that Martin Myers had apologized to me without adding a but or a request for money attached to it. He was not defending me to Denise. I knew he was probably still cowering in the car while she raged. But in the privacy of this text chain, he had admitted the truth. He knew they were wrong. He had always known. I did not reply. I was not ready to absolve him. His silence had cost me tens of thousands of dollars and years of emotional health. But seeing those words on the screen felt like a small crack in the wall. The united front of the Myers family was fracturing. Denise was alone in her delusion. I put the phone back in my pocket. I did not text back, "It is okay," because it wasn't okay, but it was the truth, and the truth was a start. I walked home as the sun started to dip lower in the sky. Back in my apartment, I sat down at my computer. I knew the graduation ceremony was being live-streamed. I could have found the link. I could have watched the procession, scanned the crowd for the empty seat where Brooke should have been. I could have watched it to gloat, to feel a sense of vindictive justice. But I realized I didn't care. I didn't want to see them. I didn't want to see the drama. I didn't want to be a spectator to their misery any more than I wanted to be the financier of their joy. Instead, I opened YouTube. I typed a query into the search bar: "Family Financial Abuse Recovery Stories." I clicked on a video of a woman sitting in her living room, telling a story that sounded eerily like mine. She talked about the guilt. She talked about being the designated provider. She talked about the fear of being cut off from love if the check stopped coming. I watched another video, then another. I scrolled through the comments. There were thousands of them. My dad opened a credit card in my name when I was 18. My mom told me I owed her for raising me. I paid for my brother's wedding while I was eating ramen. I was not alone. This was not a unique defect in my character. This was a pattern. I was part of a silent club of children who had been raised to be ATMs. As the evening settled over Denver, turning the sky a deep, bruised purple, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. For years, I had defined myself by how much I could give them. I was Alyssa the fixer, Alyssa the wallet, Alyssa the safety net. Today, for the first time, I was just Alyssa. I looked at the black square of my webcam, the same camera where Denise had delivered her ultimatum just a few days ago. "We do not want to see your face." I looked at my reflection in the monitor. I looked tired. Yes, but my eyes were clear. My jaw was unclenched. They had told me to disappear from their big day. They had tried to erase me. But as I sat there, safe in the apartment I paid for, surrounded by the peace I had fought for, I realized the irony. The day they didn't want to see my face at her graduation became the first day I truly saw myself. 3 weeks after the graduation that never happened, the silence in my life was broken not by a digital notification, but by a physical knock on my door. It was a Tuesday evening in Denver. The sky was a bruised purple, threatening a summer storm, and I was sitting on my couch reading a book about forensic accounting. I had found a strange comfort in reading about other people's financial deceits. It made mine feel less personal and more like a textbook case study. When the knock came, I froze. My building had a buzzer system. No one came up without calling first unless they had tailgated a resident through the lobby doors. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was distorted by the fisheye lens, but I recognized the man standing there, or rather, I recognized the shell of him. It was Martin, my father. I stepped back. My first instinct was to lock the deadbolt. My second instinct was to call the police. I had blocked their numbers. I had filtered their emails. I had built a fortress around my life. But I had not anticipated a physical siege. I looked through the hole again. He was not banging on the door. He was not shouting. He was standing there with his shoulders slumped forward, holding a small, beaten-up carry-on bag that I recognized from family vacations 10 years ago. He looked small. He looked defeated. I debated leaving him there. I debated turning off the lights and pretending I was not home. But the daughter in me, the one I thought I had evicted, whispered that he looked sick. I unlocked the deadbolt. The sound was loud in the quiet apartment. I opened the door. Martin looked up. The circles under his eyes were dark purple bruises. His gray hair, usually combed over to hide the thinning spots, was wild and unwashed. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt that looked like he had slept in it. He did not smile. He did not try to hug me. "Hi, Alyssa," he said. His voice was gravel. "Dad," I said. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. "I am not giving you any money. If you are here to guilt me about Brooke, or to tell me Mom is sick, or to ask for gas money to get back to Ohio, you can turn around right now." Martin let out a long, shuddering breath. He dropped the bag on the floor. "I know," he said. "I didn't come for money. I came because I didn't have anywhere else to go." He looked down at his shoes. "Your mother kicked me out," he whispered. I stared at him, the mighty Denise Myers, who preached family unity above all else, had exiled her husband of 30 years. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. He walked into my apartment like a man entering a cathedral. He looked at the clean lines of my furniture, the view of the city, the peace I had cultivated. He sat down on the edge of the armchair, keeping his knees together, as if he was afraid of dirtying the fabric. I sat on the sofa opposite him. I did not offer him a drink. I did not offer him food. I waited. "She found the statements," Martin said, staring at the coffee table. "After you froze everything, after the loan for the roof was denied, she started digging. She wanted to prove you were the one lying. She went through the filing cabinet. She found the other accounts." "The other accounts?" I asked. Martin rubbed his face with his hands. The sound of his rough palms against his stubble filled the room. "It wasn't just Brooke, Alyssa," he said. I felt a coldness settle in my stomach. "What do you mean?" "The money you sent," he said. "The transfers for the boiler repair last winter. The money for the transmission. The money for the medical bills when I hurt my back.
You didn't fix the boiler? I asked.
No, he said. I fixed it myself with duct tape and a prayer. Then where did the $2,000 go?
Martin looked at me. His eyes were watery and red. DraftKings, he said, and online poker, and the credit card I opened 3 years ago to pay off the other credit card. I sat back. The room seemed to tilt.
For years, I had constructed a narrative in my head, in my version of the story. Denise was the villain, the spender, the narcissist, the one who demanded luxury she couldn't afford, and Martin was the victim, the henpecked husband who just went along with it to keep the peace. I had pitied him. I had thought he was weak, but innocent. I was wrong. He wasn't a victim. He was a parasite of a different species.
So, I said, my voice trembling slightly,
when you called me crying about how cold the house was, about how Mom was freezing, that was a lie? It wasn't a lie that we needed money, he said weakly. It was just, I had already spent the grocery money on the games. I thought I could win it back. I always thought one big win would fix it. But then I lost, and Denise was screaming about the bills. So I called you. And you let me believe it was for Mom. I said, you let me believe I was saving the family from destitution. He nodded. I am sorry. Lise, I felt a surge of anger so hot it almost burned my throat. You are sorry? I repeated. I ate instant noodles for 3 years. Dad, I didn't turn on my own heat because I was sending you money to fix yours. And you were gambling it away on your phone? He did not answer. He just shrank further into the chair. So why are you here? I asked. Why aren't you in Ohio? Because when the bank blocked that $75,000 loan you stopped, everything crashed, he said. Denise realized we have no liquidity. She started looking for assets to sell. She found the debt. She found out I drained her savings account too. She told me to get out. She said she is consulting a divorce lawyer on Monday. He looked up at me, and I saw the pathetic truth. She blames you. Alyssa, he said. She tells everyone who will listen that you destroyed the family, that your jealousy ruined Brooke's graduation and caused this stress. And I let her. You let her, I said flatly. Because if she keeps blaming you, maybe she won't look too closely at me, he admitted. But it didn't work. She looked, and now I am here. I looked at this man who had driven me to soccer practice, this man who had taught me to ride a bike, this man who had stolen thousands of dollars from me and then hid behind his daughter's back while his wife threw stones at her. I stood up. I walked to the window. The city lights were blurring through the rain. I realized then that my financial abuse wasn't just about a spoiled sister or a demanding mother. I had been the bankroll for a dysfunctional ecosystem. I was funding Brooke's delusions of grandeur, Denise's social climbing, and Martin's gambling addiction. I was the glue that held their lies together. By cutting the money, I hadn't just stopped a payment. I had forced them to look at each other in the harsh light of sobriety. I turned back to him. I am not going to let you stay here. Dad, I said. Martin flinched. He looked like I had slapped him. I just need a couch for a few days. Alyssa, just until I find a job. No, I said. I spent my 20s paying for your housing. I am not spending my 30s sharing mine with you. I walked over to the desk. I picked up a notepad and a pen. I am not giving you money, I said, writing as I spoke, and I'm not giving you a place to hide from Mom. If you stay here, you are just running away again. I ripped the page off the pad. I walked over and held it out to him. He took it. His hands were shaking. What is this? He asked. It is a list, I said. There is the number for a bankruptcy attorney in Denver who does pro bono consultations. There is the number for a gambling addiction support group that meets downtown. And there is the address of a men's shelter 3 miles from here. He looked at the paper. He looked at me. A shelter? He asked, his voice cracking. Alyssa, I am your father. And I am the daughter you robbed. I said, I am the daughter you threw under the bus to save your own skin. I sat down on the coffee table. Facing him, I leaned forward. I love you, Dad. I said, God help me.
I still do. But I'm not your safety net anymore. I am not your secret keeper. Martin stared at the paper. A tear leaked out of his eye and tracked through the grime on his cheek. She is going to take everything, he whispered. The house, the car. Then let her, I said. It was never really ours anyway, was it? It was bought with money we didn't have. He was silent for a long time. The rain tapped against the glass. Do you think... He started, then stopped. He cleared his throat. Do you think there is a chance for me? To be a decent father? In whatever life I have left? The question hung in the air. It was the first honest question he had asked in years. He wasn't asking for redemption. He was asking if redemption was mathematically possible. I looked at his broken face. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him it would be okay. But I was done lying to make people feel better. I don't know, Dad, I said softly. He flinched again. But I continued. If you want to try, it has to start with the truth. No more hiding. No more just this once. You have to separate your finances from Mom. You have to face the debt. You have to stand on your own 2 feet, even if those feet are shaky. I pointed to the paper in his hand. It starts with that list, not with a transfer from me. Martin looked at the paper again. He folded it carefully, creasing the edges with his thumb. He put it in his shirt pocket. He stood up. He picked up his bag. He looked older than his 58 years. He looked like a man who had just survived a shipwreck, but lost the cargo. Thank you. Alyssa, he said, not for the money, just thank you. He walked to the door. I watched him go. I wanted to run after him. I wanted to hand him a $20 bill for a hot meal. My hand twitched toward my purse, but I stopped myself. Giving him money would be giving him poison. He opened the door. He paused for a second, looking back at me. I am sorry I wasn't the dad you deserved, he said. Then he walked out into the hallway. The door clicked shut. I locked the deadbolt. I walked back to the window and looked down at the street. 5 minutes later, I saw a small figure emerge from the building, hunching against the rain, dragging a suitcase toward the bus stop. I watched him until he disappeared around the corner. My apartment felt vast. It felt empty. I had lost them. I had lost the mother I thought loved me, the sister I thought I was helping, and now the father I thought I was protecting. The family unit I had sacrificed everything for was gone, dissolved by the acid of truth. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I was an orphan of my own making. But as I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of my own coffee, my own candles, my own life, I realized something. I might have a broken family, I might have a scarred heart, but for the first time in a decade, my bank account was mine, my future was mine, and the person standing in the window was no longer a resource. She was a woman. I walked into the kitchen and poured the rest of the coffee down the sink. I washed the cup. I was ready for whatever came next, because whatever it was, I would be paying for it with my own money, and I would be living it on my own terms. The email arrived 2 days after my father left my apartment. It did not come with a subject line of apology. It came with a subject line that read, "Notice of intent to sue for damages." I sat at my desk and read the text. It was long, rambling, and clearly written by Denise after several glasses of wine. Though she had tried to use legal terminology she likely found on Google. She claimed that my sudden and malicious withdrawal of financial support constituted a breach of verbal contract. She claimed that my actions had caused irreparable reputational harm to Brooke, who was now allegedly suffering from severe depression because she could not walk at graduation. She demanded a settlement of $50,000 to cover Brooke's therapy, the lost tuition, and emotional distress, or she would hire a lawyer and take me to court. I forwarded the email to the attorney I had consulted with earlier in the week. 10 minutes later, he called me. I could hear him chuckling on the other end of the line. "Alyssa," he said, "this is not a lawsuit. This is a tantrum. There is no such thing as a binding contract to be an adult child's ATM. However, if she actually tries to file this, it opens the door for discovery, and discovery would expose the identity theft. So what do we do? I asked.
We end it, he said. I am going to draft a document. It is not a settlement. It is an ultimatum. You get them on a call, you show them this, and you tell them they have two choices. They can sign it, or you press charges.
The final Zoom call was scheduled for Friday evening. I set up my camera. I wore a white silk blouse. I looked fresh, rested, and professional. I wanted the contrast to be stark.
When the screen connected, the image from Ohio was grim. Denise was sitting at the kitchen table, but the lighting was dim, casting long shadows over her face. She looked 10 years older than she had a week ago. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, messy bun. Brooke was sitting next to her, wearing a hoodie, her eyes puffy and red. Denise did not wait for pleasantries.
You have the settlement offer, she snapped. Her voice was brittle. Are you going to transfer the funds, or do I have to call my lawyer? I looked at Brooke. I am sorry you didn't get to walk. Brooke, I said quietly. Brooke looked up. Her eyes were full of venom. Shut up, she spat. You ruined everything. I applied for a job yesterday, a marketing coordinator position. They ran a background check. Do you know what came up?
A massive fraud alert on my credit file. They rescinded the offer. Alyssa, I can't get a job because you flagged me as a criminal.
You are not a criminal because I flagged you.
I said, you are flagged because you and Mom used my social security number to secure loans without my permission. That is the definition of fraud. Denise slammed her hand on the table. Enough, she screamed. I am not listening to your lectures. You agreed to help this family. You promised. And then you pulled the rug out. That is abuse. Alyssa, that is financial abuse. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I did not scream back. I simply pressed the share screen button for the last time. The document that appeared on their screen was not a bank statement. It was a legal memorandum titled Summary of Potential Criminal Charges. I watched their eyes scan the document. Count 1. Identity theft. Penalty. Up to 15 years in prison. Count 2. Wire fraud. Penalty. Up to 20 years in prison. Count 3. Credit card fraud. Penalty. Up to 10 years in prison. Below the charges was a list of evidence: the IP address logs, the forged digital signature, the audio recording of the conspiracy, the text messages. I spoke calmly. I am not going to pay you $50,000. Mom, I am not going to pay you 50 cents. I scrolled down to the second page. This is a binding legal agreement, I said. It states that you admit to using my identity without authorization. It states that you will never contact me again for money. It states that you will not disparage me to family members or future employers. And it states that if you violate any of these terms, I will immediately file the police report that is currently sitting on my lawyer's desk. Denise stared at the screen. Her mouth hung open. The bluster, the threats, the fake legal posturing, it all evaporated in the face of real prison time. This is blackmail, she whispered. No, I said. This is a plea deal. I am giving you a choice. You can sign this paper and we go our separate ways, and you stay out of jail. Or you can continue this fight, and I will let the district attorney decide who is the victim here. Brooke began to cry again. Real, terrified sobs. Mom, she whimpered. Mom, look at the prison time. Denise looked at me. Her eyes were black holes of rage. You would put your own mother in prison? She asked. I looked right back at her. You would put your own daughter in $75,000 of debt to fix a roof? I countered. The silence stretched. It was agonizing. Denise was shaking. I knew she was looking for a way out, a way to spin this where she still won, but there was no spin. The numbers were absolute. This is a death sentence for this family, Denise hissed. You are killing us. No, I said. The family died the day you decided I was a resource instead of a person. You signed the death warrant when you forged my name. Brooke lifted her head. She looked at me with a hatred that chilled my blood. You are going to die alone. Alyssa, she said, her voice shaking. You are going to sit in that expensive apartment with your money and your perfect credit score, and you are going to rot.
No one will ever love you because you are cold. You are ice cold. I felt a pang in my chest, but I pushed it down. Maybe, I said, looking at her, but that is better than drowning in debt and pretending to smile for a camera while I pick my family's pockets. I would rather be alone and safe than be surrounded by people who are only there for what I can give them. Denise crossed her arms. I am not signing it, she said. I am not signing an admission of guilt. Then I will hang up and call the police, I said. My finger hovered over the mouse. Suddenly, a figure moved in the background. It was Martin. He walked into the frame. He was wearing the same wrinkled shirt he had worn when he left my apartment. He looked defeated, small, and infinitely tired. He had gone back. Of course he had. He had nowhere else to go. But as he stood behind Denise, he put a hand on her shoulder. Sign it. Denise, he said. Denise spun around in her chair. What? Sign the paper, Martin repeated. His voice was not loud, but it was firm. Are you crazy? Denise shrieked. You are taking her side? After she kicked you out? I am taking the side of reality, Martin said. He looked at the camera. He looked at me. There was no hatred in his eyes, only a profound, tragic resignation. We took too much. Denise, he said softly to his wife, we got greedy, and we got caught. It is over. Let her go. Denise looked at him. Then she looked at the screen where the list of prison sentences was displayed. She looked at Brooke, who was sobbing into her hands. She picked up the pen. She scratched her signature onto the tablet they were using. It was an angry, jagged scrawl. There, she spat. She looked at the camera one last time. I hope you're happy. Alyssa, she said, but listen to me. From this second forward, you have no mother. Do not call me when you get married. Do not call me when you have children. You are dead to me. I felt the words hit me. They hurt. They would always hurt. But underneath the pain was a sensation I had not expected. Relief. I understand, I said. I waited for the document to sync. I saw the notification that the signature was captured. Goodbye, Denise, I said. I did not say Mom. I clicked End Meeting. The screen went black. I sat there for a long time. The apartment was quiet. The war was over. I was an orphan, disowned by a signature on a PDF. But then, I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the lights of Denver. I breathed in. The air tasted clean. It tasted like freedom. The narrative shifts to the present day. I am sitting in front of my webcam now, but this is not a Zoom call with my family. The ring light is reflecting in my eyes, and the recording indicator is blinking red. I take a sip of water and look into the lens. They told me not to come to the graduation. I say to the camera, they told me I would ruin the day. They told me I was negative energy. I pause. It turns out, that was the kindest thing they ever did for me, because by kicking me out of their frame, they forced me to build my own. I lean forward slightly. If I had gone to that graduation, I would still be paying for the party. I would still be the secret guarantor of a life I wasn't allowed to live. I would still be the stage crew, working in the dark so they could shine in the spotlight. But today, I am the main character of my own life. It cost me my parents. It cost me my sister. It cost me the illusion of a happy family. But looking at my bank account, looking at my peace of mind, and looking at the woman in the mirror who finally learned to say no, I know I got the better deal. I smile, and this time, it reaches my eyes. If you are listening to this, and you feel like you are just a walking credit card for people who claim to love you, I need you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not selfish, and you are not alone. Please tell me in the comments where you are listening from. I want to know who you are. I want to know your story. I cannot pay your bills for you, but I can be the first person to tell you the truth that saved my life. You do not owe them your existence. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button so we can get this message to everyone who needs to hear it. You might just save someone a fortune.